Hey everybody! We're trying something new with this setup. I don't know if it's gonna work, but we're gonna try something new. So about a year ago, I made a video talking about my Haunted Mansion book collection. I went through each book, one by one, and then explained them, and just showed them off. Most of you guys seemed to like it, and that video did well. At the end, I said something to the effect of, I can do more if people want me to, because new Haunted Mansion stuff is coming out all the time, so that inevitably means that the library is going to get bigger. Well, about a year has passed since that video came out, and I have indeed acquired a lot more Haunted Mansion books. So I figured that we would just go through all the new editions, one by one, and just update you guys on how the collection is going. And that's about what we're going to do today. Make sure to stay tuned to the end of the video for a very special announcement. We're going to start with what I call the familiar faces. These were books that I might have mentioned in the last video, or I had different versions of them in the last video, but now I have a new version of it, and that's what we're going to share today. This is The Haunted Mansion from the Magic Kingdom to the Movies by Jason Sorrell. This is a fairly definitive history on the Haunted Mansion and everything about it. That goes through the ride's history, and then it goes through like a walkthrough of the attraction. And at the end, there's some stuff about the film, because this was released in 2003, right when it came out. This was in the last video, so I know you're inevitably thinking, and why the heck do you have two different versions of this book? I will tell you. This is the second edition of the book, released in 2009 for the 40th anniversary. That's the thing with nonfiction, they like to release different editions of the same book, because with any kind of history, things are changing, you'll learn new things, and new events happen in the timeline, so you kind of gotta update it periodically to keep your readers informed. And the main thing that this book is focused on, as far as things that are different from the last one, is on the refurbishment that happened in 2006, 2007. So it includes all that new stuff that got updated. And that's about all that's different between this version and the first version. There has been a third version of this book that was published, that being The Haunted Mansion Imagineering a Disney Classic. And that is the most up-to-date version of this book that you can get. It was also in the last video. So if you're gonna get this book, I'd say get the newest edition of it. If you want the stuff with the movie, then get the first edition. You really don't need this middle bit. The only reason I have it is because it exists. In the last video, I talked briefly about the comics that were published by Slate Paper Graphics in 2006 and 2007. I brought up two different compilations of the books, and one of them I said included all of the comics. A helpful commenter pointed out that no, that's actually not the case. So, if you want to get every single comic, every single story that was ever published by SLG about the Haunted Mansion, you need to get every individual issue, which is what I have right here. There are 7 issues in total, and I have them all. Personally, I would not recommend you go out and buy every single one of these issues, because these go for like crazy expensive nowadays. They're pretty rare, so you see how they originally cost only $2.95? It costs so much more than that. I probably paid too much for it. It is nice that I finally have these individual copies, because when I make my videos, I need to get like individual scans of pages. And they're so much easier to get from a comic book, which is flat. It's so much easier to get from that than it is from a bigger book. And I do have access to all the stories now. But again, I personally would not recommend that you go out and buy all of these individual issues. Unless, of course, you are a crazy Haunted Mansion obsessed person like me. This is The Haunted Mansion. This is the Disney Kingdoms comic that was published by Marvel in 2006. This was also brought up in the last video, but instead of having this omnibus edition, I had the 5 individual issues that were published. And while those are good to have for my sake for these videos, if you just want to read the comic, it's not really that practical. So I'd say if you want to actually like read it, get like the bound version of all the issues together. It also includes some extras. It's got some concept art in the back. There's a foreword from Marty Sklar. Things like that. These comics have been out of print for a little while, but they recently did a reissue of the Figment comic about Journey into Imagination. So I don't know if that means they're going to be re-releasing all of the Disney Kingdom comics in print. So I'd say if you want a copy of, if you want to be able to read this comic, either wait to see if they get that paperback because this particular issue has been out of print for a while, or get it digitally. Anyways, the cool thing about this version in particular, it's signed. I got signed by Joshua Williamson, who was the writer of this comic. I got signed by him when I met him at MegaCon back in May. So, that makes it pretty cool. This is the only Haunted Mansion memorabilia that I have that's signed, surprisingly. But, yeah, that's all there is to say about this version. So, those were all the familiar faces, as I called them. Our next thing is going to be a new addition to the collection, a new section, if you will. These are going to be about records, because the Haunted Mansion opened in the 60s, so that means there's a lot of records about it. And I happen to own a few of them. This is Chilling, Thrilling Sounds of the Haunted House. This was released in 1964, and it's just a compilation of a bunch of different spooky, atmospheric sound effects. It's not directly tied to the Haunted Mansion. Like, you can see, the mansion on that doesn't really look much like any of the mansions that exist. But it is often associated with them because it was released around the same time it was in development, and a lot of the sounds and ambient noises are in here can be heard in the mansion. So it's often folded into mansion history. Which is why it's really cool that I have a copy. This one I got in an antique store. I played it a couple of times. This is the one that I play. However, I actually own 2 copies. So this is my very used copy that I play on a record player. This is the copy that I use, that I just have for preservation's sake and collector's sake. Now this one came sealed. It's the best condition I've ever seen one of these records in. And because it was sealed, if you can see, it still has the dust cover for the record, which you often don't see on vintage records. On vintage records, these things aren't always there because it's pretty easy to imagine stuff like this getting lost. So I think that is pretty cool. This is basically almost new. Like I said, this is the one I have for collector's sake. Well, this is the one that I actually play and listen to. This is Walt Disney's Trick or Treat. This is a record that was released in the 70s, I believe. Actually, hang on, I can just check. Yep, 1974. So, why is this in my Haunted Mansion collection? Well, I will tell you. So, the A side of this record is a story record, I should say, of Trick or Treat. Trick or Treat is a really famous Donald Duck cartoon. It's Huey, Dewey, and Louie go trick-or-treating at Donald's house. Donald kind of messes with them, but then the triplets meet a witch, and they kind of get back at him, and Donald gets his comeuppance. So that's the A side of the record. But the B side is the story and song from the Haunted Mansion, which is a really famous promotional record for the Haunted Mansion. It's been reissued a few times, and it's just a really well-known part of Haunted Mansion history. I have never been able to find Song and Story by itself. I've never been able to find it in the wild. I find all my records at stuff like antique stores. Records are something I refuse to buy online because I've seen too many horror stories about them getting destroyed in the mail. So I have yet to find Song and Story in the wild, but I do finally have a vinyl copy of it. In the first video, I mentioned that I had a copy of it, but it was in CD form. But it's still cool to have the vinyl. This one's pretty rare. This is Walt Disney Presents the Haunted Mansion, See, Hear, Read. Now the thing about this one is that in addition to having the record, which you can see back here, there is also an accompanying storybook. So how this worked is that you had a record player, you put the record in the record player, and then you would have a narrator just reading out the story, and she would tell you when to turn the page, and you could just look at the pictures and read along as you listen to it on a record player. They were like the first audiobooks. And this is a pretty rare one. Unlike all the other ones, this has never been reissued. So the only way, if you want to own a copy of it, is to find the original record. However, as is the case with pretty much all of these records, if you just want to listen to it and you want just a practical way to listen to it, you can find them on places like YouTube. And this one in particular, you can also find videos people have made where they take the audio from the record and then they like overlay the pictures from the book, so you get pretty much the same effect. But it's still pretty cool to have a physical copy of it. So those were the records. There's only one section we have left, which are the new arrivals. These are things that are entirely new to this collection, ones that I don't have, that weren't mentioned at all in the last video. This is all new stuff. So, let's get right into it. This is the Haunted Mansion official strategy guide. Back in the days before the internet, if you were playing a video game, you didn't have access to like chat rooms or anything like that to figure out how to play it, so if you're really stuck, the best way to get your tips is by buying books about the game. And this one is about the Haunted Mansion video game that was released in 2003. And it just kind of gives you some tips, it gives you secrets, and just tells you how to beat the game. I've never played this game before, full disclosure. Even if I had it, I'd have nothing to play it on. This was released for the PS2, the Xbox, and the GameCube, and I have none of those consoles. However, I'm not 100% sure on who owns this game now, because I think the game developers went out of business a long time ago. If anybody who knows that happens to be watching this video, if you re-release this game on something like Steam, I will play it, and I will talk about it on my channel. Just throwing that out there. This is probably the newest addition to my collection, and by newest I mean this is the newest thing in this entire video. This is a book about the Haunted Mansion, but about the Tokyo Mansion, which I think is really cool. In all my research about the Haunted Mansion, there is one big blind spot that like no one seems to know a lot about, and that blind spot is the Tokyo Mansion. There is just not a lot of information on it on the internet, and I'm sure any information that is out there is probably not in English. So it is really cool to have like an officially published thing from Disney that is actually just about that mansion. I can't read Japanese, so I have no idea what any of this says. So if any of you guys out there do happen to know Japanese and can get your hands on a copy of this book, that would be really helpful. Now, you might be wondering why this is backwards, this looks backwards. Well, I will tell you. In fact, I won't just tell you, I will just demonstrate. Hang on. This is just a regular English language book. It opens this way. And that is because English reads from left to right. However, Japanese, on the other hand, is read from the other way. It's read from right to left. So when things get translated from Japanese to English, especially when they have a lot of pictures involved, that is why they look backwards. So that is the reason why this book is formatted the way that it is. I probably spent way too much money on this book. I had to have this imported from Japan. As you can see on the back, it looks like it was originally a little over 600 yen. I have no idea what that is in USD on the top of my head, but it's probably a lot less than what I paid for it. However, I'm not sure if I'm ever going to get the chance to go to Tokyo Disneyland in my lifetime, so if having a book is the closest I'm ever going to get to it, I can be happy. I know some of you guys are going to ask because I just showed a Dragon Ball manga. No, I have not seen the new movie yet. As of recording, it has not come out in the United States yet. However, I will have seen it by the time this video goes up, so I'll put like a tweet or something I made after seeing it on the screen right now. This is Little Golden Book's The Haunted Mansion. This is just a little golden book. It's just a little children's book about the Haunted Mansion. It just goes through the ride. Just takes you through the ride and exploring it. Got some pretty cool illustrations. It's pretty simple, I think. And this is a really recent one. This came out last year. Little Golden Books released a few different Disney books last year for Walt Disney World's 50th anniversary. This was one of the ones they made. They also did Space Mountain, they did Jungle Cruise, they did Small World, and probably a couple others. So this one's really recent, so this is one you could probably still find. Why does it have the Disneyland Mansion if it's meant to tie into the 50th? I don't know. This is Disney Adventures Magazine, which was a magazine that was published in like the 90s and early 2000s. It's just a kids magazine that has like things like just stuff that kids are interested in. Every few issues they did something called the Comic Zone, which is just a book that's just completely filled with comics. If you watch my iceberg video, you'll remember that in another Disney Adventures magazine, there was a comic about the Haunted Mansion. It was made to promote the 2003 film. And I mentioned that there was another one that I did not have access to that was published in Disney Adventures. Well, guess what? Here it is. I have it now. I'm pretty sure means I have every single Haunted Mansion comic that has ever been published. So that is pretty neat. Nickelodeon Magazine? What's a Nickelodeon thing doing in a Disney video? Well, I will tell you. This is basically kind of the same thing as Disney Adventures Magazine, but this has less of a focus on Disney, and it's just kind of general kid stuff, even though there is some Disney in here. As you can tell, which is why it's in this video. No duh. Anyways, one of the features of this is holiday movies, and this came out in November of 2003. Same month that the movie came out. So naturally, there is a little bit about the Haunted Mansion movie. Not a ton. It's just a little blurb. It's a little interview with Jennifer Tilly. However, the really cool thing about this issue in particular is that one of the inserts, because that's what all these little kids magazines used to have, is the inserts. These are just posters of all of the characters. I've seen these online, but I've never been able to see them in good quality. So I'm probably going to be scanning these eventually and putting them online somewhere. So this is really nice for me to have. Oh god, remember Tak and the Power of Juju? Remember when they tried to make that a thing? This is Celebrations Magazine, which is a magazine all about Walt Disney World. And this is one from fall of 2019, from the before times. This one is just all about the Haunted Mansion. Well, it's not really all about it. The cover story is Secrets of the Haunted Mansion and Tower of Terror. So, it's just about spooky Disney attractions, and those are what people think of when they think of spooky Disney attractions. So, it just includes a little article about the history of both of the rides and the little things you didn't know about them. Includes some really nice photographs. Like that is one of the best looking pictures I've ever seen of the loading zone. The loading zone is really dark and impossible to photograph. Impossible to photograph. It's impossible to see in there sometimes, but that's what these magazines always have. I love looking through a lot of them. In fact, I've gotten ideas for videos just looking through this magazine. Like, you remember last year I made a video about the contemporary mural? It came from an article from one of these magazines. I know some other Celebration magazines I own have articles about the Haunted Mansion, but I've never gone through and picked them all out. So, if we ever get to a part 3, I'll be sure to note those. This isn't really a Haunted Mansion book, it's more of a Haunted Mansion thing. This is the press kit for the movie. And by the movie, I'm of course talking about the one with Eddie Murphy. So this was given out to the press to get the word out about the film. One of these is a booklet where they just tell you everybody who worked on the movie. There's a little bit about the making of it. You've got cast bios and things like that. And in the other pocket, this is a thing I thought was really cool, you have really nice colored photographs of the film. Some of them are just stills from the production. Other of them are stills from the actual movie. Now, the purpose of these is that you're supposed to take them and then you could put them in like newspapers or a magazine, or I guess you could do it on the internet. There was a little bit of internet back then. Or you could just put them on there and then you could use them to just talk about the movie. I have no idea if Disney still does stuff like this, so I can't tell you whether or not they're going to do this for that new movie that's coming out next year. But if they do, I'm probably going to end up with one in my collection. This is also movie related. This is the screenplay. Now, if you remember my old video on the Haunted Mansion movie, I mentioned that the script went through a couple revisions during production. In fact, I found an interview with one guy on the internet who said he had read an early version of the script, And it was basically the same plot, but there were a couple major differences. The biggest one is that there were more characters from the ride, and it apparently also elaborated more on the backstory for the mansion in this universe. Well, this is that version of the script. We might actually have to talk about this in the future. And rounding this off is The Nightmare Before Christmas. And why is there a Nightmare Before Christmas thing in your Haunted Mansion shelf? Well, shut up, because I'm going to tell you. So, before Nightmare Before Christmas existed, Tim Burton wrote a poem that was basically the basic plot of what would eventually become the movie. And this is that version. So, it's got original illustrations from Burton, and it's just all of that original text in one place. Nightmare is one of my all-time favorite movies, so I'm really glad to own a nice copy of this book. And this specifically is a special edition of the book that they had at Barnes & Noble last year. I have no idea if it's still available, so don't ask. And some of the special features in this special edition is it has a CD, which includes the original poem, narrated by none other than Christopher Lee, which is pretty stinking cool. And in the back, there is a little sleeve that includes original prints. What are these original prints, you might ask? Well, they are the tarot cards from Haunted Mansion Holiday. And that is why this is on my Haunted Mansion shelf. I have never been able to find good quality versions of the tarot cards, so I'm really happy to have these little mini prints. But yeah, that is the sole reason this lives on my Haunted Mansion shelf. And those were everything that's been new in my Haunted Mansion book collection. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed seeing all the new stuff. And if you would like to see a part 3 in the future, I can't guarantee you when that's going to be, but I have a feeling there's going to be a part 3. If you'd like to see that, let me know down in the comments. And now it's time for this special announcement. By the time this video goes up, the D23 convention is going to be right around the corner. And that's just the big Disney convention where they announce all of the new things that are coming to the parks, all the new movies, and they have cool exhibits and a bunch of special stuff there. Well, guess what? I'm going to be there. I'm going to be at the expo all 3 days. I'm really excited. This is my first D23 expo, and I get to be there for this one. This is the first one they've done in a couple years. So because of that, the video schedule is going to be a little different for the rest of the month. You're getting at least one more video before the month ends, but since it's going to be an extended break, there's not going to be a new video for a few more weeks. I'll be back before the end of the month, but the schedule is going to be slightly different. So this is just warning you guys how things are going to go down. But when I'm back, I'll have plenty to say about the convention and everything else I saw while I was down in Anaheim. So, yeah. So, I think that's everything I had to say. Thank you so much for watching as always, and I will talk to you guys soon. Take care.